What is Dick Cheney up to? Pat Buchanan and Lawrence O'Donnell, MSNBC political analysts. Here's Dick Cheney making the case again that President Obama is making the country less safe. Let's listen.
They campaigned against these policies across the country, and then they came in now and they have tried very hard to undertake actions that I just fundamentally disagree with. On the morning of 9/12, if you will, there was a great deal we didn't know about al-Qaeda. There was a need to embark upon a new strategy with respect to treating this as a strategic threat to the United States. There was the possibility of al-Qaeda terrorists in the midst of one of our own cities with a nuclear weapon or a biological agent. It was a time of great concern, and we put in place some very good policies, and they worked for 8 years.
Classic Cheney. I want to go to Lawrence on this. Strategic threat to the United States. The United States was threatened strategically by this group called al-Qaeda in the way that the Soviet Union threatened us back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Strategic threat, not a danger, a fundamental threat, almost verging on an existential threat to the United States. What is he talking about? What is he talking about when he says they might have a nuclear weapon? Where does he get this stuff from? Is this scare talk or what? I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it is scare talk as far as we know, Chris. He continued in his list of things that they were reacting to in the White House. He included what he called the anthrax attack on the United States, which, as you know, was a couple of envelopes that showed up, one in Washington, one in Florida, that had absolutely nothing to do with al-Qaeda. Nothing to do with al-Qaeda. This is the kind of fog that Cheney has been putting out for a while. A big blur of information that includes these threatening-sounding things. That's the way he linked Saddam Hussein to 9/11. He was constantly doing that in a fog of words that he would throw out in shows like this. And so this was just more of that.
This was for a purpose, to get us to go to war with Iraq. That's why he sold this nuclear threat, this mushroom cloud. He did it again and again, and it sold with the American middle. He got what he wanted, the war he wanted. Why does he keep touting this nuclear threat that no one's been able to find where it was? Where was this nuclear weapon? It wasn't in Baghdad. We can't find it. Right. Where was it? Was it in some balsa wood plane heading our way? Nobody can find it. But it got us into that war. He achieved his goal, and he's still pushing this line. Why, Pat?
Well, I think this is something different. He's talking about a terror threat of a nuclear weapon, and you're right. I've never heard him mention that unless he is talking about, you know, there was a lot of talk about the terrorists getting what's called a dirty bomb, which is not a nuclear bomb. It's a lot of radioactive material. They blow it up, and it radiates an area.
It's not a strategic threat.
It's not a strategic threat to the United States, but we did hear a lot about dirty bombs in those days.
A dirty bomb is not a nuclear explosion.
I know it is not.
It is not. It's a TNT explosion of radioactive materials. It can cause a lot of havoc in a downtown area.
Exactly.
Right. There's no doubt it's a problem. It can ruin a part of a sidewalk. There's no doubt about it. But to use that as a cause for war.
Well, he's not talking about cause for war. He's talking about terror here, Chris. Now, but let me say this. What is Cheney doing? I think Cheney, first, he's defending his record. Secondly, I think he genuinely believes we are threatened now more because of what Obama is doing. He wants to get his case on the record. Bob Schieffer is an outstanding correspondent with a national show. He invited him on because he believes he's a serious man, even if he disagrees with him, and has got something to say. And Cheney's going to say, if I'm the only man in America that believes this, I've got a right to be heard of it, and we don't need to hear from you.
But does he know something that Barack Obama, the president, doesn't know? I mean, seriously,
yes.
What does he know?
My guess is this. Well, let me speak, all right? My guess is Cheney's got lines into the intelligence community, and a lot of folks in there, and they're telling him this is outrageous.
Well, why don't those people tell their superiors?
David Ignatius, hold it. David Ignatius wrote a column saying morale is in the pits at the CIA. They're probably talking to Cheney. Cheney's saying, I'm going to make this public if I'm the last guy to do it. He doesn't talk to the White House, Chris, because they don't give a hoot what he says, and he knows it. The only outlet he's got is that media, and he's using it well.
Yeah. Pat, we're not going to leave this segment with you lying to the American people, suggesting that the former vice president has information that the CIA will not reveal to the current president. That's insane. That's a ridiculous thing to assert.
Well, it's not a lie if it's true. Is it true? How do you know it's true?
Because David Ignatius said, well, let me speak. David Ignatius says the morale is horrible there, and the people those guys would go to
Obama.
would be Cheney if they go to anybody. I'm not saying they're doing.
You're blaming the superiors?
No, I'm not saying that Cheney's got it. What I'm saying is, if I were a reporter, I would suspect they are talking to him constantly.
Okay, let me suggest an idea I've noticed over the years about Dick Cheney. And I don't buy this argument, Lawrence, that you said he's changed. I've never met anyone who's changed in my life. People are who they are. That's my experience with people. Their character basically stays the same. Now, Cheney's out. I think Cheney doesn't like anybody who thumbs his nose at them, whether it's Saddam Hussein or it's any Democrat in the street. He doesn't like anybody who's on the other side of anything, and that includes Colin Powell. Let's watch what he said here about Cheney, what Cheney said about Colin Powell this week. And this is the guy who led us in a couple of wars. Here's what he says about his colleague, Colin Powell.
Colin Powell said Republicans would be better off if they didn't have Rush Limbaugh out speaking for him. Where do you come down?
Well, if I had to choose in terms of being a Republican, I'd go with Rush Limbaugh, I think. My take on it was Colin had already left the party. I didn't know he was still a Republican.
You know, so you think that he's not a Republican?
I just noted he endorsed the Democratic candidate for president this time, Barack Obama. I assume that that's some indication of his loyalty and his interest.
And you said you'd take Rush Limbaugh over Colin Powell.
I would.
All right.
Politically.
If the definition of the Republican Party, Pat, were loyalty to that guy, it would be a pup-tent. A pup-tent. The party's down to 1 in 5, and he wants to shrink it further. Pat, you're laughing. You know he has no constituency out there.
I'm laughing at what you're saying, Chris. Look.
He just threw Colin Powell out of the party.
What he said is Rush is a more loyal Republican than Colin Powell because Rush didn't like McCain and endorsed him, and Colin Powell turned his back on McCain. Not only that, endorsed a guy who got his nomination by trashing the war that Colin Powell sold to the American people.
Let Rush Limbaugh speak for himself. He's hardy enough to do so, Pat. Here he is, Rush Limbaugh today on the radio on Cheney.
Dick Cheney knows that there's really no such thing as a moderate. Dick Cheney is one lone voice in the Republican Party. What motivates Dick Cheney? He's not hot for interns. He has all the money he needs. He's not a torture freak. He don't want to run for political office. Dick Cheney is motivated by love for his country.
Well, he's not hot for interns. There's a relevant feature. That was an interesting side.
Rush is a better Republican than me.
Dick Cheney is wonderful with that avuncular manner in which he seems to be speaking an objective truth when he's always speaking a partisan truth and doing it out of the side of his mouth in a way that suggests, well, whatever. I don't want to get into that. But what do you make of this, Lawrence?
Look,
Colin Powell, would you rather have him as a Republican candidate for president if you were a Republican, or would you rather have Limbaugh?
Yeah. Colin Powell's a winner. Rush is a loser. Cheney's a loser. And so the Cheney-Limbaugh party could command maybe 13% of the vote. Every single position that Rush Limbaugh advocated in the last election was rejected by Republican voters in the primaries. Rush was against McCain in the primaries. Rush lost the primaries. Then Rush lost the general election in a big way. That's who Cheney wants to attach to.
I want to go to one bite here because it goes to the question which you and I have argued about. We never argue, Pat, but we think about it a lot. We have a common interest in truth. Here's Bob Schieffer, the host of Face the Nation, asking Dick Cheney, the former vice president, how much President Bush knew about the interrogation techniques used on his watch.
President Bush know everything you knew?
I certainly, have every reason to believe he knew a great deal about the program. He basically authorized it. I mean, this was a presidential level decision, and the decision went to the president. He signed off on it.
What do you make of that? What do you make of that?
Well, for a guy who's so careful in the choice of every word, to say he basically authorized it is very different from he authorized it. I would hate to find out down the road that there was something that the vice president authorized or the vice president passed along. What he suggested was a presidential authorization to other people without actually having that presidential authorization.
No. Did you ever hear a ghost for a book describe the role of the person he goes to the book for? They always say, oh, that was basically his book.
That was right on the money. What he's saying is Bush authorized it.
He did not say Bush authorized it.
All right, he authorized it, and what he's saying is I may have known more details than Bush knows, which is probably true.
That's not what he said,
You know,
Pat.
you're an
Nice
expert
try.
in language, you're a speechwriter, you're a columnist, you're excellent in our language, our common language here. Why would he hedge it by saying he basically authorized it? Either you authorized it or you didn't.
Authorized. He's given Bush cover because Bush might not have known every detail that he and Scooter Libby and the rest of them knew. He's given him cover, for heaven's sake.
So he's being loyal here.
He's being loyal.
Lawrence, last word. Is that loyalty or is that claiming I really am the boss? This guy was the Dauphin here.
I think Cheney has a lot to be worried about in the potential investigations down the road here, including the potential for criminal liability. And he does not know exactly what he can say about what he told the president or didn't tell the president. There were an awful lot of one-on-ones. Cheney and the president. No one else was there. No one knows what Cheney told him.
That's going to be Dick Cheney in the dock for torture as his mouth curls up in that denial. But he won't deny it, Pat. He's going to admit it.
Sure. He'll see. Look, he's taking full responsibility.
I think he's a stand-up guy. Dick
Chris,
Cheney.
The criminality here would not be torture. It would be about basically a coup d'etat in which this vice president usurped presidential authority, lied about it to other people.
Okay,
That's where your prosecution could exist.
I couldn't say it better myself. Pat Buchanan, Lawrence.